channel. I missed you all. Like, it's been about a year. I know, I'm so sorry. However, life. I'm just learning this whole YouTube situation, learning social media in regards to being a blogger, vlogger, things of that nature. And the biggest thing is I ended up having to get a new computer. Tried to troubleshoot so many things, been trying to upload this video for quite some time. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it because I do not want this to be a super long video. So the weather is starting to change, and I mean, we love having the arms out in the summertime, our cute sundresses and all the things, but it's about to get cool, then it's gonna get cold. We gotta be cute, right? So let's just go ahead and get something popping for the fall, dip on over into winter. Vogue 1649. I had to have it, and now you gotta have it. So I went ahead and made this really nice tutorial for you all to sew along with me so that you can have this banging coat. I mean, why would we not want this to be on our bodies when it gets cold outside? Like, we gotta do this. We gotta be out here doing our thing. We gotta be fly. Like, that's just the whole name of the game. Like, we love clothes. We do what we do. And although this coat is just all kinds of amazing, we want to make sure that we're doing this thing the right way. I had a few questions here and there. It's an average make, so it's not quite easy, but it's not very difficult. But there are some things that need to be addressed, hence the sew along. For this coat, again, Vogue 1649, I used some beautiful blue wool that I got from Minerva.com. I'm a Minerva ambassador. They have some of the best fabric that you could ever use. So I use this beautiful blue wool. If you want some, go ahead. I'll put the link in the description. So basically, get you some wool, get you whatever it is that you may want to make this coat, okay? Like, we have to have this coat. So before we go any further, if you're my friend, because I feel like we're all friends, if you're enjoying this tutorial along the way, please, 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 please like, number one, and subscribe to my channel. So real quick before we get into the tutorial, only difference between view A and view B is that view A will have the Rogaine ribbon going around the trim of the coat. I mean, can we just, please, can we just look at the point of this coat? Like, Jesus. But yeah, the only difference is the Rogaine ribbon around A and B will not have Rogaine ribbon. Other than that, the views of the coat are pretty much the same. So not gonna hold you very long, but one more time, if you are enjoying this tutorial along the way and you say, hey, I wanna see what else she has coming in the future, let me go ahead and subscribe to Homegirl. So let me go ahead and like the video, even share it with somebody. But most important, subscribe to my channel. I have fallen in love with doing sew-alongs again. I actually made this coat like in February, I know. But I really had technical issues. Like, this was not a ploy to get you all to watch this video. I did what I had to do, and I bought a new laptop, and we're ready. Let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, you want to make sure you have the right pattern, okay? So this is Vogue 1649, and by saying you need to have the right pattern, I'm saying you need to make sure you have the right size envelope. So if you're on the smaller size, you would get the one that ranges, I think, 6 to 12, and then on the larger end, it's 14 to 22. The notions for this particular pattern call for 4 packages of the 1/4 inch bias tape double fold, so very thin in width, and needed 2-inch Rogaine ribbon for the trimming of the coat. We're making coat A, so this is 4 yards. I had to get 2 rolls of that. And I am such a fan of these buttons, such a fan. I've used them in a previous pattern. I made a crushed velvet A-line blazer dress a little bit over a year ago for Frocktails in Atlanta. So yeah, I love these. I thought they'd be great, especially for how I'm gonna dress this coat up, darling. And that's all we have. Everything else is good to go. We have the thread, we have the serger threaded. Let's get to work. Starting in step 1, we're going to interface all the pieces that require it. So 16, 14, 9, 10, 11. All of those pieces need to be interfaced. But to save time, I went ahead and interfaced those while off camera. After interfacing, you'll go to step 2, where you're ready to reinforce the sides of the right front and the left front. So the right front is piece 1, left front piece 2. But we're going to start with piece 1. So with piece 1, first thing you want to do, make sure you have transferred all of your markings, all of your notches. Okay? We're going to go to step 2. When you get to step 2, it tells you that you need to, number 1, reinforce the corner, actually on pieces 1 and 2. So we're going to do steps 2 and 3 all in the same time. But with 2, we're going to reinforce this corner with some thread for stability. Once we do that, we're going to snip into the small dot that I transferred from the marking on the pattern. And we are also, from one notched edge to another, or pretty much down the entire side, we are going to do a stay stitch for stability. We will do the exact same thing for piece number 2. After we do that for both, we're going to, I don't know if how well you can see my markings, but I tried to use a pen with a light color. So here you can see the dark blue, and here are my markings, and this is my top line for my dart. If you're not familiar with making a dart, basically you will pinch this fabric into that area, pitch it inward. I'll show you exactly in just a second. Once you do that, you're going to do a stitch coming down from the point to where those 2 lines will meet, come down to the next 2 lines and down to this point. We'll demonstrate that in just a second, but you'll do the exact same thing for piece 2. Step 2, as already stated, calls for us to reinforce the inward corner of the right front of piece 1 and of the left front piece 2. So we've already kind of pointed out where those corners are, and you're going to take your rotary cutter or some scissors and make a slight snip. And the reason why is because once you make that snip, you don't want to accidentally tear the rest of your fabric. So we've reinforced the corner, made the slight snip on piece 1. Now we're going to repeat the same thing down in the corner of piece 2. So again, you see where we had the stay stitch coming down from one marking to the other, and down in that corner we have the stay stitch. We use the rotary cutter, make our slight snip. The reason that we have this is because it makes it much easier for you to pin pieces 1 and pieces 2 to the fabric that we'll use a little bit later for making the skirt of the coat. I have this thing where I like to continuously put my pattern piece back over my jacket, which is what you just saw me do. And sometimes that helps me to just visualize my markings. And when I said I like to use a light color, that's because I use erasable ink, basically, that can be removed with steam. So you can find those at any of your Office Depot, Walmart, something of that sort. But right here, we're making the dart on piece 1. And basically with any dart, you're going to always pinch together your markings. And when you pinch it together, it will basically look like, once you pinch it and you put the pins through, it will kind of give a V type appearance, because it will be wider at the top and taper off at the bottom. So put a few pins in just to kind of hold that in place. Take it over to the sewing machine, and you are just gonna, back stitch at the beginning, come down to the point. I like to put my last pin right at the tightest pinch point of the dart and come all the way down and sew off of the fabric. So start wide, come in deeper, tear your thread once you're done, and right here you have your first dart. So since we've already created our upper dart and we're already at the sewing machine, we can go ahead to step 3 and make our waist darts. So right next to where we reinforced that corner, you see where we had that little snippet, if you look right next to it, we have some blue markings. You have one at the top, two in the middle, two down a little bit further, and one at the bottom. The reason why you have those is because that dart is going to be pretty much in the formation of a diamond, and you're going to pinch those together so it will be tapered at the top, go wide as you come down, and then will taper off as it comes from the middle downward. So again, that dart will go in the shape of a diamond. And since we're already here, didn't make sense to go back to my cutting table, because that's pretty much where I put my pieces of fabric together and pin. I just went ahead and stayed right here and decided to make that dart, give it a quick stitch, and move on to the next piece. So we'll throw that under the sewing machine, make the quick dart, and move on to the next step. And remember, after you make the waist dart for piece 1, you're going to do the same thing for piece 2. So again, we're going to make sure we start off tapered and go wide. And as we come down, when we get to the middle, kind of come down a little bit straight. And then from there, we will go ahead and taper off again. And again, that will be your waist dart, and that's pretty much in the shape of a diamond. And that looks really good, girls. Once you have the coat together, to snatch that waist in, oh, it's everything. Moving on to step 4, we're going to take the side front piece number 3, and we are going to match the markings and the notches to side front piece number 1. Okay, that will be your right front piece number 1. So again, line up the markings, notch, and you're going to clip them down the side. I feel like I should point out to you at this point that I will be speeding up anytime we're going to do continuous clipping of fabric to another piece, because it's pretty redundant. We know exactly what needs to be done, and we're not going to waste a lot of valuable time because this video is already kind of lengthy. So I'll be speeding up through most of the clippings from this point. But once you do that, we'll zip over to the sewing machine, and we'll do one straight stitch coming down the side. So let's head over to the sewing machine real quick. So at this point, we've gone over to the sewing machine. We've made the straight stitch coming downward, and I do want to move a little slower to point out something to you. First, where we had to reinforce that corner, this is exactly the reason why, because now we need to clip the lower end of the side front to the extra piece of fabric that sticks out on piece number 1. So I had full intentions of expanding the side width by 2 inches wider, but I didn't do it. I chickened out. I only extended that piece, so I came back and cut that extra off. The only reason I was going to extend that piece is because I'm very busty and this coat is double-breasted. But at this point, we can sit piece number 1 to the side because 3 is now attached, and let's pull out piece 2 and repeat the same steps. So we're using piece number 2 to attach the side front piece number 3 in the same fashion as we did with piece 1. So you pull out your fabric, you have all your markings there, and you're going to attach side piece number 3 to the markings and the notch on the side of the left front piece number 2. Back at the sewing machine, and we're going to give this a quick straight stitch. And at this point, I'm excited. Why are you excited, Stacy? What's going on? What's up, Stace? Why, you ask? Because now we're ready for step number 6. Step number 6 is when we grab piece number 4, which is that banging sash, that A-line tip of the coat, which is the whole reason that we bought the coat. So as soon as we finish with this straight stitch of the side piece of number 3, we're going to jump head first into piece number 4, because the drama that piece number 4 is going to give to this coat, I mean, that's why we're here. Like, we're living for this. Like, this is it. This is it. So it's looking good. We have piece number 3 attached to piece number 2. So let's go ahead and pull out piece number 4, and we're going to attach that at the markings and notches as detailed in your instructions. So take a quick second, inspect your fabric, make sure everything is looking the way you want. Grab piece number 4 because it's about to get so good. First things first, you want to give a quick stay stitch around the neck of piece number 4. There's also a notch there. After you do that, you're going to reach back, pull over piece number 2, and you are going to come down the vertical left side of piece number 4, and you're going to attach that to the vertical length of what's left of piece number 2. So you'll attach that down the side, and you see the neck of piece number 4 that you put the stay stitch. You're going to then attach that to the bottom of piece number 3 that you previously attached in the last clip. After you're done pinning, run it over to the sewing machine. Sewing this part is fairly easy because you're just going to trace the shape of the U, according to how you have the coat pinned. Make a straight stitch. And after this step, we can take the whole front portion of the coat and sit it to the side. So now we're at step 8, where we're going to take the 2 pieces for number 5, the back pieces of the coat. You're going to take those and you're going to put the right sides of the fabric together. Okay, you'll have them right together, and then you're going to use your wonder clips, pins, or whatever it is you choose to bind the fabric. But you're going to put those starting at the middle of the neck, and you're going to clip those all the way down the coat. After you clip those down the coat, you're going to go over to the sewing machine, and you're just going to give that a straight stitch. Once you do the straight stitch, you may as well stay there and move to step 9, where you're going to do a stay stitch down the sides of your back piece. So you're going to come down the right side and the left side of the back of the coat. At this point, we're ready for step 10. So we're going to get the fabric pieces 6 and 7, and we're going to take those matching the notches, and we're going to lay them right sides facing to the sides of the coat. Using your wonder clips, pins, whatever it is you choose, clip those. Take it over to the sewing machine, give it a quick stitch down the side. The straight stitch is our friend, as you can see throughout the majority of this pattern. So I'm going to head over, give it that stitch down the side, come back and repeat the same thing for piece 7. Now that we've stitched piece 6 to piece 5 with the right sides facing, open that up, make sure that the stitching went well, there was no bulky anything bunched together. We're getting ready to do the same thing for piece 7 on the right side of piece number 5. while we're getting ready to do that, I do want to make this statement to you. I'm not a big fan of lengthy sewing videos. However, I believe in quality over quantity. So, with that having been said, please press pause as much as you feel you need to rewind, go back, do whatever is needed to make this coat as fabulous as you need to make it. Me speeding up different parts, don't let that stress you out. Me moving a little, a little bit faster, don't let that stress you out. Hit pause, rewind. I do it when I follow some of my favorite people. And yeah, and I always read my comments. So if you have a question about anything, let me know. So while we talk through that, I mean, you pretty much did the same thing with 7 onto 5 as you did with 6 onto 5. It's looking pretty good. And guess what we're about to do now? Throw some pockets on there. Who doesn't love a pocket? You. So this brings us to step 11, where we're going to take pocket pieces number 8. We're only going to, right now, reach for the true pockets, not the lining pieces. So you should have cut 2 of the actual fashion fabric for the pocket and 2 of the lining. And just in case you may have gotten your wires a little bit crossed, we're still working on the back of the coat. So you're clipping this pocket piece number 8 onto the back piece of the coat, the side of the coat in the back, which is piece number 6. So don't forget, make sure you are honoring your notches. You're going to start clipping with your notch. Then you can clip above the notch and below the notch, come all the way down the side of the pocket. You're going to repeat the same thing for the other pocket piece number 8, and you're going to put that on piece number 7 of the back of the coat. After you do that, we're going to do a straight stitch coming down the side of the pockets. And remember, you want to make sure you're putting the notches to the coat in this fashion. If you're new to sewing, I know one of the things I jumped out there and I did a really difficult pattern at the beginning of my sewing journey, and I still can't believe that I did that, and therefore I made some mistakes. So make sure you're laying your pieces the right way. So go ahead, start clipping at the notch, clip above and below, and then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and do a straight stitch. I'm going to do that for both pocket pieces. And very, very, very important, after you are done stitching your pockets, you are going to repeat this same pocket process using the lining of the pockets, and you're going to stitch them onto the front of the coat. So again, I'm going to repeat. You're going to take the lining pieces of number 8 and you're going to stitch them in the same fashion as you did on the back. You're going to stitch them onto the front of the coat. And after that, we'll be ready to move on to step 12, which is where we're going to actually attach the front and the back of the coat together. However, just before attaching the front to the back, and this will be a great time to finish some of your seams, go ahead and use your serger and we'll go ahead and start putting the front and the back of the coat together. So here you see why I told you to go ahead and use your serger down the sides. If you don't have a serger, you can use a zigzag stitch, but the whole point of that is you do not want your fabric to start fraying. It's just not worth it to make a masterpiece and then it falls apart. However, make sure you are putting the right sides of the fabric together when you begin to clip them together. You may have a little piece of excess fabric. I've said this before. I have a little bit at the top of my coat. That's why you see my clips coming up. Once you pinned it together, it just take your scissors, your rotary cutter, clip that little extra piece of fabric off. Wait for it. Okay. Had to get that off. It was bothering me. So sometimes that just happens. I don't know. I get a little happy and I leave a little extra piece of fabric. Anyway, we're back at the sewing machine. We're doing our straight stitch all the way down the side. Come down, go around the pocket, all that jazz. It's looking good. I'm loving it. How about you? And after you come all the way down to the bottom of the coat, be sure to come back and serge around the pocket. You don't want the pocket to fall apart. You don't want any fraying. You put your hand in your pocket and then it goes straight through an opening because the fabric has come apart due to it not being serged. Some people like to just serge the pocket off the top versus doing the straight stitch and then coming back and serging. But whatever you prefer, go ahead and do that. But just make sure you come back and get the seams intact for the pocket. Enough talk about the pockets. Go ahead, finish your straight stitch down the side of the jacket. And once you're done with that, you can sit your coat over to the side. Moving on to step 14, we have two pieces for the flaps. They will go on the front of your coat. So I've already interfaced the other side of the fabric. This is your lining. We are going to put clips all the way around and leave one side open. So we're going to clip and stitch all the way around, but we're going to leave one side open. So really quickly, we'll pull out our wonder clips and clip the lining to the pocket flaps, leaving one side open. We'll repeat that for the other one. Before you flip it inside out, go ahead and trim down that seam allowance to pretty much half the amount of fabric that's left. Once you do that, clip the corners to kind of make it easy to turn inside out and have a nice clean point. After that, give it a nice press. I was having some issues with my cordless iron. Still haven't quite figured this one out. It was gifted to me. It works, but it leaks water a little bit, and yeah, but I was determined to use it. It still works. It does what it needs to do. After you go through and press it out, you can go ahead and sit it to the side, and now we're pretty much ready to pin to the markings on the front of the jacket and pin our flaps down such that they can be sewn. Two important things to point out here. Number one, you have to use pins at this point. There's no way a wonder clip is going to get to those points on the jacket. Number two, and this is probably the most important, make sure the orientation of your flap is correct. Although I'm about to show you how I sewed this down, I absolutely had to remove my flaps and switch them out because the flap that you're seeing should actually be on the right side of the jacket, not the left. So pay close attention to the orientation of your flaps according to how it looks on step 16, because it's not blatantly stated, but when it comes to these flaps, the best way to know if it's in the right orientation, after you have pinned this flap down, when you pin it, fold it over, and the points of the flap should point away from your body. They should not point towards the center of your body. So basically, the way that you're looking at this flap now, take that same flap, put it over on the right side of the jacket as opposed to the left. And when you fold that flap down, even before you stitch it, because you want to make sure before you stitch it down, you want to make sure that when you fold the flap down, the points of the flap are pointing away from your body. So obviously I had to remove these flaps and move it over to, remove this particular flap and move it over to the right side, because once I stitched it down, I was like, this looks a little funny. So again, when you fold that flap down, before you stitch it, make sure the points of the flap are pointing away from your body. They're going to be pointing to the side. If they're pointing towards the center of your body, you'll know, because it just won't have that clean, crisp, fly look that you're going for. So make sure your flaps are in the right orientation. So if my point still hasn't been made, stop, fold the flap down. You will notice that my flap is wrong. It's pointing towards the center of the body. You want that pointing away, so move your flap over if needed. Literally remove the pins, move it to the other side of the coat, repin it in its proper location. You're going to make a straight stitch down the side, trim the seam allowance, and then we'll fold the flap down and do a nice top stitch to keep the flap in the right orientation so it doesn't truly fly like a flap in the wind. So now take a few minutes, get the coat in the nice orientation that you need it to be in to have a decent working space. Grab your scissors, clip your excess thread. After that, go ahead and clip your seam allowance, but be very, very, very careful not to cut through the layer of your coat. So, like I said, you're going to trim that seam allowance to about half of what's there, just to make it neater, because keep in mind we're sewing wool. This is going to get a little bit bulky, so be mindful trim half of the seam allowance. After that, you'll be ready to fold down the flap and do a top stitch, keeping it in place. Now that we've gotten our flap stitched onto the front of the coat, we have turned the coat inside out. Okay, so we want right sides facing. Okay, this is the wrong side. So right sides of the fabric facing, and we are going to stitch corner to corner, corner to corner across the shoulders. After doing that, that would be a great time for you to try on this coat to make sure that you don't need to size down, and if you needed to open it up for any reason, then this would be the perfect time. If by chance you do not have to open up the coat, let's go ahead and get ready to attach our ribbon. So I took it upon myself to get my ruler and some of my tailor's chalk, and I measured up about 3 inches from the bottom of the hem, just to kind of give me a nice place marker to keep the ribbon even across the bottom of the coat. So once you've done that, just make you some little marks just to kind of help you stay in line. You can go ahead, start pinning down your ribbon. However, we have to be mindful that a few steps back, we attached piece number 4, which gave the asymmetrical point of the coat. Because of this, you will have to be mindful that this ribbon that you're attaching is going to go from one end of the coat to the first point. Okay, the first end of the point of piece number 4. Then you're going to have to attach the fabric starting from the other side of the point. And basically those 2 points will be known as a miter. Okay, it's just basically the joint of a 90-degree angle. So you'll see this a little bit better as we stitch. But once you get to the point where the 2 strips of ribbon, one coming from each side of the bottom of the coat, once they meet up at that miter, you're going to have to fold the ribbon at a joint, like somewhat of an angle, for you to have a nice clean finish where those 2 pieces of ribbon attach. And that has a really great view on number 19, step 19. So as you see here, I have the miter pinned down in 2 different sections because you have one piece of ribbon coming from one end. So basically you have one piece of ribbon coming down vertically and you have another piece coming across horizontally. I purposely wanted to show 2 different ways that you can attach these at the miter. So on the paper, on step 19, it shows you 2 small inset circles where the ribbon has been folded in to basically come into like an arrow point, like an arrowhead. But what I did, for the piece of ribbon that you see coming left to right horizontally, I took that and just came down to where my chalk ended, and then I took the piece that was coming down vertically and just laid it directly on top of it, folding the edge under so that it will have a clean finish. So you can either make the points as you see on step 19, or you can fake the point like I showed you on this particular part of the video. So whichever one you find easier, go for it. No one will be able to walk up to your coat and say, oh, you didn't do this miter correct. I mean, child, please. If they up on your coat like that, they just won't want to because the coat is hot, okay? So once you've secured your horizontal stitches underneath, you're going to bring that vertical ribbon across the top. And I'm saying vertical because you just have the coat turned sideways. Once you've done that, just go ahead, secure the stitches over the top. And after you've done that, go to the other end of the ribbon and you're going to do a straight stitch just as you did on the horizontal side. You're going to secure that, just do a straight stitch coming down. Once you've done that, you're done with the ribbon part. So at this point, the ribbon has been secured to the bottom of the coat, and now we're ready to add our neckband. So that puts us at step number 20, and we are going to do a stay stitching between the 2 markings on the right side of the coat. So we're going to do a stay stitch following how my finger is outlining that section. Okay, and as you can see, I've already done it for you, but you're going to do the stay stitch between the two markings. After doing that on step 20, you're going to reach for your undercollar. You're going to reach for the undercollar, and you're going to find the two markings on the undercollar. After that, you're going to go to the sewing machine. You're going to do a stay stitch just in the same outline as I did with my finger. After you do the stay stitch, you're going to come back and reach for piece number 11, which puts us at step number 22, because this will then be your neckband that you will attach to the undercollar. Okay. In order to do so, find the notches on your neckband, and you're going to find the notches on your undercollar. With the right sides of the fabric together, you're going to clip the notches to each other, and then from there, you'll clip the rest of the neckband. And of course, you'll have to maneuver the fabric a little bit because obviously there's a little curve in the undercollar. So you'll clip those together. After you do that, you're going to take it to the sewing machine and give it a straight stitch coming around the curve of the undercollar. So step 23 calls for us to do an edge stitch of the undercollar and the neckband, basically as a way to get some of the seam allowance out of the way so it won't be as bulky. But I did not realize I skipped this step. It is not the end of the world. Your coat will be beautiful if you skip this. So just find your markings on the back of your coat, and you're going to attach the notches and the markings to the notches and the markings on the neckband and undercollar. So you'll tack those down, go to the sewing machine, give it a straight stitch, and we'll be done with that. And while we are clipping together our nice undercollar and neckband, this will be the best time to tell you, if you have enjoyed this tutorial thus far, please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm really falling in love with sew-alongs. It's something that I was afraid to do, but now I think I got the hang of it. So if you like it, I'm definitely going to do more.
This is how they
and look, we have a collar and a
However,
attached to the back of our coat.
Come back to it in a
So guess what? I know you guessed it. Now it's time to make some sleeves. We are almost done with this coat, y'all. Like, wow. Okay, we're going to start with the fashion fabric of the sleeves. We're going to put the black lining to the side, but we're going to start with our blue wool fabric for our sleeves. So the first thing you want to do is find the markings on the side of the sleeve, because you are going to do a stay stitch between the two markings on the side of the sleeve. I have both sleeves here, so you might as well take both to the sewing machine and do the same thing at the same time. We've done our stay stitching, and now we can just kind of move to working with one sleeve at a time. So we just finished with the upper sleeve, which was piece number 12. Now we're going to reach for the undersleeve, piece number 13, and we're going to match the notches. So where we did the ease stitching on piece number 12, we're going to use the notches over on piece 12 and 13 to clip the undersleeve to the upper sleeve. Because you already know the drill, as soon as we're done clipping 12 and 13 together, we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to give a nice straight stitch joining together piece 12 and 13, the upper sleeve to the undersleeve. since we're already at the sewing machine and the only thing keeping the sleeve from being completely closed is to come over and clip and stitch the other side, let's just go ahead and do it while we're here. So we found the notches on the other side of 12 and 13. We clip them together, do a nice straight stitch coming down the side. And since we're still here, let's go ahead and give a nice cuff to the sleeve. It'll make the whole process easier once we do the lining and we stuff the lining inside of the coat. So just a simple fold up, maybe about an inch, do a straight stitch around. And at this point, we can go ahead and attach this sleeve to the body of the coat. So something I always do that I don't see on other patterns, I like to make a nice little snip right at the top of the sleeve head, just to help me orient when I put the sleeve inside of the armhole. I always take a moment and take that notch at the top of the sleeve head, and I match that notch to the seams of the shoulder. It's just something that works like seamlessly for me. And obviously you already know when you are making anything with a sleeve, the single notch is always going to go to the front of the sleeve and the double notch is always going to go to the back. But having that extra snip that I make at the top of the sleeve head, I think just makes things so much clearer. So go ahead, insert the sleeve into the armhole, often referred to as the armistice. Put that inside. Go ahead, start clipping your coat. So you'll clip at the top of the notch that I told you to make. You put that with the seam of the shoulder and you clip all the way around. Once you do that, what are we going to do? We're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to do a single stitch around, going from the beginning of the seam around back to meeting up at that same seam. And as long as everything fits, which you would have known before you started stitching, you can go back to your serger and finish up some seams. You know, you want to clean it up as you go. It just makes life easier. So at this point, we've pulled that sleeve inside out and it's looking pretty doggone good. Little side note, I guess you all could tell I'm obsessed with HGTV. I think I was like Bob the Builder in a previous life. So you can always catch me watching Hometown, Good Bones, something. I'm always watching HGTV. Moving right along, we're going to insert some shoulder pads. Pretty simple, it's just more so of a tacking type situation. To give me the best orientation of these shoulder pads that I'm pretty much going to tack inside the coat, I broke out my dress form, turned the coat inside out, and I'm just putting some pins, more so to make sure that it is not shifting. The shoulder pad is not shifting when I go to throw my little stitch here and there. You know, you don't want to have that Quasimodo kind of appearance. So yeah, at this point, I'm pretty much doing the rest of the coat using this dress form. And I mean, we're pretty much going to do this and we're going to sandwich the rest of the coat together. Of course, before we got to this point, I'm sure you would have gone ahead, paused the video and inserted the other sleeve, just because I try not to be redundant to help with space on this video. So we'll tack those down, and coming up shortly, I'll just show you how it's stitched inside the coat, and then we'll repeat that on the other side. Now we have gotten to step 31. We are dealing only with the facing and the lining. The coat has been set to the side. We're going to take the front facing and the back facing and we're going to clip them together at the shoulders. When we clip those together at the shoulders, we're going to go to the sewing machine, give those a straight stitch across each one, and come back so we can add more steps. And as always, you want to be sure that the right sides of the fabric are laid together when you are clipping them together at the shoulders. Another thing that I feel I need to point out, just in case someone is really paying attention to the detail, I had run out of black interfacing, so I started to use white. So that's why the underside of the blue wool, because you're looking at the wrong side because the right sides of the fabric are clipped together. But the white is interfacing because I have been using black interfacing in other spots, but here I had to use white because I was not going back to the store. So now that everything is clipped together, we can run over to the sewing machine, do that straight stitch across the shoulders, and then we can apply the bias tape around the back of the facing. Now it's time to break out the bias tape. And I have a confession. I have a love-hate relationship with the size of the bias tape that the instructions said that you should get, when it gives you the list of all the notions. The reason why I have an issue with it is because for the bias tape to be as small as it calls for, like the 1/4 inch, it is almost impossible to not miss a stitch. I would highly recommend you get the extra wide double fold bias tape. And honestly, you can skip that altogether if you just want to, and you can actually use your serger. If I make this coat again, I'll definitely be using the serger. I feel like I lost a lot of time trying to squeeze that little bitty strip of bias tape all the way around. It looks good, but I mean, y'all have no idea how much time I could have saved if I had not done this. So I will tell you, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in the very beginning, if you do not want to use this bias tape, don't use your serger, or you can use extra wide double fold bias tape. This very small 1/4 inch bias tape, it was just a headache. So I have it here. I'm showing you all that I did it. Of course, I'm gonna speed up the video where you can see me clipping the bias tape on, but honestly, serger or use wider bias tape and it will save you a complete headache, trust me. Still clipping, not doing much anything else but clipping. Don't know about you, I'm still clipping bias tape. Yeah, a headache. It was a chore. I'm just going to reiterate again that either use your serger or extra wide double fold bias tape, because after doing all of that clipping of this teeny tiny bias tape, I don't care who you are, what you're doing, you will miss a stitch. Doing that straight stitch, it's a headache. But yeah, I'm still clipping. Don't know about you, but I'm still clipping. So be mindful. Bigger bias tape or use your serger. And can you even imagine pinning this on the facing? Like, not clipping, pinning. Just be mindful of my little notes. Well, we've successfully put the black 1/4 inch bias tape on there, but I would highly recommend you going up to the double wide. So you need double fold and double wide. I know the pattern calls for just the thin double fold, but you need the wide. The reason why I keep having these That's a no-no, but it's so thin, it's kind of hard to catch it. And it could be due to the fact that I'm actually using wool. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you use a double fold, double wide bias tape. Yeah, highly, highly, highly recommend. But the next step, we'll just set this to the side. Next step calls for us to repeat what we've already done. So when we did the collar and the neckband on the coat, we're going to do the same thing for the facing, because we need to attach it for the sandwich that we're going to make in the end. So since we've already done it before, I went ahead and did that. So we have that ready to clip to the facing. We are going to find the notches. The notch has your stay stitch. We're going to use the notch here, because you always want to have your right sides of the fabric facing each other. And we're going to come around, do the same thing here. Here's your notch here, your notch here. And from there, we are going to spread and clip accordingly. So we've attached the collar, leaving the little free edge right here. So we have the collar, the neckband attached to the back facing and the front facing. And at this point, we're going to put this to the side. And we are going to work on the only thing that's left, which is our sleeves. And we've already done the sleeves before. We have 12, we have 13. You're going to stitch your sleeves in the same manner that you did for your main coat. So we're gonna make the sleeve lining. We'll do that. We're gonna do that one off camera, just because we've already done it once. And after that, we'll come back and attach it to the facing. With sleeves, the single notch is always the one that's going to go towards the front. This would be our single notch. So we're going to pull this to the inside. Okay. Have the sleeve. And because you want the right sides together, okay, I'm going to take this. I always make my center notch. I'll take the center notch, go right here at the junction of the lining and fashion fabric. Start clipping. You just want to work your way around. If you want to make sure it's clipped correctly before stitching it, let's open this out. And there we go. Okay. So now we're going to go stitch around. I'm going to stitch around, and we're going to serge. So here's the facing before we attach it to the actual coat. And so the coat is on the dress form, and you have the right side of the facing sandwiched against the right side of the coat. At this point, we're ready to start clipping. Okay, so you want to get the best orientation as if you turn the coat inside out, and you're going to clip going around the top of the collar, come down the front, only the front. We're not touching anywhere else. Coming around the neck and coming down the collar, we're going to clip the coat together. Just to reassure you that everything has been placed in the proper orientation, if you turn your dress form around, this is how the back of the coat should look, with everything clipped together, ready to be sewn at the machine. At this point, we've been on such a roll, I realize I have not called out a step number. So I'm going to combine 44, 45, 46. Pretty much, we have already stitched around the coat. We've turned the facing down, which is equivalent to turning the complete coat inside out as if we had a complete lining. You're going to tack the sleeves, honestly, by hand, just a needle, thread. And once you do that, you are ready to hem the bottom of your coat. But you can wait to do that until after you have created buttonholes and you have actually attached your button. So if you are sewing something like a wool coat and it has a facing to it, issue with that is the facing, along with the thickness of the wool itself, is just like a big old sandwich that the buttonhole maker is not going to want to move front and back. The feed dogs are not going to want to move that super thick 2 layers of fabric back and forth like it should be. And so I don't know who it was, but somebody used a zigzag stitch. Whoever you are, please let me know, comment, because I like to give people their credit. But they dropped the stitch to 0.5, and I think that was it. Let's try it out. So basically, we made 2 rows of the zigzag stitch. And let's just back up and go back over this one more time. I don't want to be too bulky, but you catch my drift. And in doing so, you come over and make another layer of that. No, flip it back up. Let's come down right here. And make another layer. Go down and one more time. This a little bit fast. It's not pretty, but you do have a buttonhole. Use your seam ripper like you would do as normal, and open up that buttonhole, and you are good to go. And darling, make sure your button is just as fabulous as your coat. Now work it, honey, because we made it to the end of this coat tutorial, and I hope you had just as much fun as I did when I made this coat for myself. So this is the perfect time. It's still hot outside, but it's gonna get cool real soon. That's the blessing in this tutorial having taken me so long to get together. So if by chance you decide to make this coat, please tag me. Instagram, Facebook, whichever one. I'm So Stacy. Please like and subscribe to my channel. If you decide to have a sewing party, whatever it may be, let me know. I'll make the coat again with you. But this has been such a pleasure, and I just thank you for your time and attention to my little video. Deuces.